Greetings, blessings, and gratitude for choosing Dissected The Podcast with Chuks and Kae-C. In this episode, we need to talk about emotional intelligence in relation to absent fathers.
Following on from, the absentee father conversation, Miss Kae-C, I would love to hear your perspective on, or your observations really, on what you, as the mother, as a actual single mother, raising your children without influence from their father for over a decade.
Yeah.
What have you observed as far as the impact on, I suppose selfishly, I would love to hear from your son, but I'm sure there's been impacts from your daughter as well, and I would love to hear that as well, as much as you're willing to share, obviously.
And it may even be a thing where he can join one day and maybe give his perspective, because in the previous episode, when you were describing what you were going through, I can completely envisage him in that whole thing.
Okay.
So I do hope that the previous episode does enable single mums to just kind of reflect and understand what's going on. Not that, but also for these young men who were raised by single mums to kind of identify and understand why it is they're feeling the way that they're feeling. And so recently for me, I have been hit with the realization that as much as I feel I am doing, or not feel, I am doing the best job that
I was about to.
Your lip trembling.
I was about to. Don't
go there. As much as I am doing what I do, and I am complimented on my children often, and I am proud of the fact, but I am not a man. And so what came to light recently in a situation was just how much of the lack of his dad's input, involvement, anything has had on him as a young man. My daughter, I wouldn't say shows any signs specifically. I don't know whether that's because she's younger, whether it's because she has a good relationship with my dad, whether it's because as a young lady, it's more important for her right now to have mum and that I can give her what she needs. But what I do stand firmly and strongly on is as she gets older, how the lack of her dad's presence will impact her in male interactions, or when she then becomes, when she gets into relationships with men, and how she gets into those relationships with men. And I actually have a rule at home where they both have to give each other a compliment on a daily basis. That's something that I came up with before I even kind of began to reflect on the situation, just because I think it's a nice thing to do. I mention that because as a young lady, I don't want, and what I see in my day-to-day and working with children as well, is that a young lady who is not complimented by her father, by her brother, by the men who should be supporting, grounding, and showing her worth. If that is absent, it then means that Joe Blogs from up the road can say, "Oh, your hair looks nice," or "I like the way you dress," or, you know, spin any kind of line, and it's like, "Oh wow, a guy said something nice to me."
He
Uh,
must be telling the truth. He must mean it. He
that,
must be a good person. He
yeah, I've
must
never
be
heard this.
better than the people I actually love in this world. So
Exactly.
lovely.
So, although mum, myself included, can say, "Baby, your hair looks gorgeous today," or "I like what you just did with that outfit. Like, you put that together nice," and blah, blah, blah. I'm mum, I'm a female, and I'm not going to have the same impact as if a male has paid her that compliment. So I will say that from absent father to daughter, or daughter to absent father perspective.
Mm.
Um,
And also, sorry before you go further.
mhm,
Also, as well, there is something to be said for tone and nuance in how the message is delivered as well. So, although yes, you are mother, and there's going to be an element, of course, you're going to say that you're my mum, and the
mhm,
same way I would assume, like with dad, is going to be, of course, you're going to say that you're my dad, but there is an element of just the life experience of how that message is conveyed, and the way as men we observe and study women and the nuances and differences and how to give this message to it's so much deeper. It's so much deeper than just um mother father. There's so much that goes with being male, and the same goes when you're speaking into your son and speaking onto your son. It's the same thing. We are so plugged in to the nuances of you and understand what you're saying, irrespective of what's coming out of your mouth, you know?
mhm. 100. And
So I just wanted to
I have seen that in my son, um when it comes to girls, for example. And obviously from day one, not obviously, but I always compliment him. I tell him that he's gorgeous, and I tell him this and that, and boost him up. And quite just like you said, he says, "Oh, you just say that because you're my mom, and it's only you and the women in the market that that tell me I look good."
so killed me.
He's in a market on a Saturday, so like the old women with their shopping trolleys come in and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, what are you, sweetie?" and all this kind of thing. And he's
Uh,
like, "Yeah, it's only you lot." But what I do notice is that when he gets female attention, it is exactly the same. It's almost like, "Oh, I maybe it's that realization that it isn't just mum that thinks I'm attractive, but if dad was there with the backbone and, yes, boy, your trim look good, and rare tear tear and all them kind of things, that is stamped and firm and backbone business."
Balance is the key to everything. Oh, I
100%.
stand on that. So it's definitely never a situation of, oh, mother's done all of this and it's not enough, and it's not as valuable, or none of that. It's just that's half of the half of what's supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, yeah, we can say, okay, you're not a man, so you can't do certain things. But you, if you are, I'm gonna say, if you're humble enough to objectively look at yourself and your abilities and how what your capabilities, right? You'll be able to have conversations like this and pull from my unique experience and
Mm-hmm.
other people's unique experience
Mm-hmm.
to then formulate this environment that's going to allow him to flourish and experience as much of the things that he requires as he can, you know?
And I get that. And when you say things that I don't believe that there is anything or any areas that I have lacked in through being a mum.
Mm.
You know, when it comes to the sex talk, when it comes to contraception, when it comes to how to, I mean, I've gone to every single place with him, like how to pull back foreskin and clean yourself properly. Like I've had all of them conversations. Have I felt comfortable doing it? Not at all. Have I felt like it
Yeah.
was the place? Not at all. But if I'm not telling him, then who am I giving that responsibility to? Or am I just allowing him to learn by himself? And while I'm on that point, he has now got to a point where he is comfortable about learning things by himself, even if it means making mistakes, even if it means a bit of sufferation on his part.
100%.
And that, it doesn't gel quite right with me because I'm I'm mummy mode and I'm protection and I'm, if it's predictable, it's preventable. That's something that a law that I live by, if you can see something is going to happen or the outcome of something is going to happen, you can prevent it by taking steps to avoid the outcome. But my man's just
Very
like,
sensible of you. That's a very sensible perspective.
yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Thank you.
But yeah, but certain time, you have to buck your head to know that you have to, maybe you feel like you can just miss it if I walk under this bridge here and just bring my ears down to my shoulders. And I don't have to bend my knees because my knees hurt the cookies. Could be that. But then I have to buck my head one time. Someone could tell me, no, you got to buck it. You don't want to hear. I've been listening to you telling me what to do for my whole life. And I think I know. I got hair on my face now. The women in the market are telling me I look good. The girl in my class is showing me I look good. Like, I'm out here, Let me live now. You know what I mean? And then I have to buck my head. And then as long as he's got the capability and you've created the safe space for him to be able to come to you and say, you know what, man, he was actually right, And it's not going to be a place of, I told you so. Because there are, and that's kind of that's why I say it's important for the male and the female thing, because that's generally going to be the male way. It's going to be, see, idiot, I told you. If you just listen to me, you wouldn't have that big cocoa on your forehead. The safe place is supposed to be, don't worry, it's fine. You had to learn. It's cool. Next time, hear what I'm telling you, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just assuming that's the way. Obviously, you probably say it better because, you got the mother energy. But you understand? I'm just saying, like, that's how you be the soft place, the safe place. And like I've told you a million times, it's never a judgment on you because the situation you find yourself in is not a fair situation. Because somehow, some way, you have to juxtapose, or whatever the word is, between the two positions, depending on the situation. It's hard. It's not impossible, and I haven't seen many people be able to do it better than you've been able to. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I can't lie. I'm not. It's definitely not gas, but it's real talk. So, but I'm saying it's don't feel like there's a lack on your part, because there's not. I'm not, even if that's probably not what you was thinking, but I'm just saying, just to say, it's like it's not that there's a lack, and it's the fact that the same way with my mum, there was not a lack. It was just because of the way the cookie crumbled, she was required to do more than should ever be asked of her. And she managed to supersede not only what I could ever ask of her, she superseded that by a million miles by doing more. You know, the blame falls at one doorstep.
I hear that, and I don't want this to come across as hammering all absent dads, because I think it's important to establish that there are various reasons why fathers are absent. So if the father's absent because the mum's, put
Of
that in
course.
place, then or they may be absent because they're institutionalized. Is that the right word? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or incarcerated or
incarcerated,
whatever.
that's the one. But even in that instance, there could be an element of blame there, because what have you done to end up there? But then there are
Of course.
people who are falsely imprisoned and all kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, we're not saying by a long shot that it is, Dad, you should do better. Yes, do better if you can do better, because the absence is most definitely one of great impact. In the previous episode, we touched on
Mm-hmm.
the, I would say, emotional imbalance of young boys who don't have that impart from dad for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. And
Mm.
recently, I've been hearing about a lot of killings and stabbings and shootings over things that I I can't process.
Mm.
One of the most recent and absolutely diabolical ones I heard was someone being shot over like £3.50 that can't even buy
Something like that.
chicken and chips, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind actually went to this topic at that point, because
Mm.
I was
Agreed.
wondering how many of these crimes that are being committed are by men who have been raised by single mums. And I'm not saying that that is an excuse, a reason, or
100%.
anything, but
But I do think you need to say that though, because it
yeah,
can be
yeah,
easily
I'm not,
deceived.
I'm like I said, diabolical, disgusted, all them kind of thing there. Like, I
Mm.
don't get it at all. I don't want to get it.
Mm.
I would still like to ask the question
Mm.
whether this imbalance or lack of logical thinking,
Yeah.
it seems to be lack of logic. Like, you're going to shoot somebody over something, over anything. Um,
But I
where
get
is
what you
your
mean.
logic? Like, where is your logic? And so I mean, there could also be mental health issues involved,
Yeah.
all kind of thing.
Of
But
course, we're generalizing. We have to generalize to have the conversation for real.
right,
But
um,
I agree with you. I think that there is a huge. I don't know if I'm not going to say majority, but there's definitely going to be a huge percentage of incidents like the one you just described. And there was another one that I remember where a guy's girlfriend broke up with him and he ended up stabbing her to death and then
right,
stabbing her friend or something like that.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, and like you said, there's got to be an element of mental health in there somewhere.
Mhm.
But I definitely think that the ability to regulate your emotions as a man, as a person, obviously, but we're specifically talking about men. And I believe that ability is either eroded or is not nurtured by the frustration that comes from not being able to resolve and articulate problems in your house because the I don't know, the person or the perpetrator or the uh, head of the pyramid, the head of the household is somebody who it doesn't feel internally right to rebel against. You know, there is something, and obviously this is me speaking from having no interaction at all with my father, right? So I
Mhm.
don't, and when I've made statements over the years to people that have had their father, and I've said things like, I wish I had a father in the house because when I got super mad or I felt hard done by, I could at least contemplated I should move to him or I should do that or I should if it got physical then even if I'll get mashed up, I'll be able to kind of defend myself, right? Or I'll be able to at least try. And some people would look at me like, I would never have even thought to raise my hand to my dad. And I mean, like, fair play, cool, and I can understand that. And there are some people where, even if it's not even their dad, maybe it's just a stepfather, maybe it's um, I don't know, an uncle or whatever, whoever it is, or a friend of the family or whatever, that tried to kind of overstep certain boundaries as far as they were concerned. They was able to deal with it straight without, even if you take the physicality off the table, just being able to meet energy with energy in a fair and balanced way. It's a huge, that's a huge thing. That's a huge benefit, you know, to experiencing real male hierarchy. Because even if you can't fight your dad, even if you would never fight your dad, just the fact that you would not fight your dad, not because they're a woman and that's not what you're supposed to do, and not just because that's your father and that's not what you're supposed to do. If your father's a clown or your father's doesn't warrant respect of a certain way, you can't, I would assume.
Okay.
Like put this way, if you're there's people out here that they end up with mental health issues. I've spoken to people that have ended up with mental health issues because they've grown up and been 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and had an abusive father that's abused their mother, and they sit with guilt from not being able to fix it, not being able to defend her, not being able to, I don't know, or jumping on. I got a brethren who jumped on his father's back when he was moving to the mum and got harassed and head bust and all kind of stuff, right? And he still deals with these things years later, right? So that's what I mean. Not just like, okay, I don't like you wanted me to come in at 12 o'clock, so I'm gonna punch you in your face. That's not what I mean. I just mean like, like just being able to actually.
Please clarify, because there are some people out there that will move like that, and they're on programs like Super Nanny and all these things.
100%. I hear you, but my point is that there's the hierarchy is a thing, and there's a hierarchy of parent and child that goes without saying, right? But there's also a hierarchy of males, just like I'm assuming there's a hierarchy of females. Like when you're in a group of women, I'm sure there's a way of, I don't know, whether it's whatever it is, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to come up with an example. But I'm sure there is some kind of currency. There's currency that means that this woman is more sort of, her opinion is more valid, or whatever it is, whatever the currency is. But with males, it is gonna be who's the strongest, who's the baddest, who can get the most girl, who's got the most money, who's got the most successful prospects, or who's achieved the most like success, power in whatever, I don't know, version applies at the time, is the currency. And that's how we create the hierarchy. And then ability to defend either yourself or your position or the people that you care about is huge. And what that does is that then, if you're unable to do those things, no one wants to be at the bottom of any hierarchy. And if you're at the bottom of the hierarchy through weakness rather than, I don't know, unfairness, because that can happen as well, just not having the information. If you're at the bottom of the hierarchy through unfairness, through just not having information, it's easy to come out of that. Easy to get the information, understand what you're supposed to do, because that's what happened to me. I just didn't have the information. when I got the information, I was like, oh, that's how it works. You pattern up. But if you're at the bottom of the hierarchy through weakness and inability to even comprehend, it's a sticky one. Now we're in mental health situations. Now we're in frustration. Now we're in taking advantage of women. Now we're in because you can't physically dominate the man then, because even if you're physically stronger than them, the same way that you can see a Jack Russell dominate a Rottweiler because of energy, it's the same way with humans. Do you understand? So now, because you can't do that over here, you're going to come with your woman who loves you and is moving soft energy with you. Now you're going to gain your strength over there. Those are the men that I hate. You tell me all the time. I mean, you got strength for girl, but you got no strength for man. You know. But yeah. Anyway, I digress. I'm just jumped on my soapbox and.
And it's all. I think it's all. It's all part of all part and parcel. It's something that I don't feel many people consider, even when they are in a relationship where there is mum and dad. I don't know if the impact is, because if you've got it, there wouldn't be a need to delve in and maybe investigate and even maybe have the conversation with your children, like, what do I do for you? Or what can I do for you? Or what do I do that you don't like? What can I do better? And it seems that as a single parent, can get, because they're single fathers as well, you can get so overwhelmed by just the rotation of life and trying to get everything right and balanced. And I'm not speaking about the ones that want to do that. There are some, my gran used to say, the children are not brought up. No, you're brought up, you're not dragged up, because there is a difference between a child that is raised with love and care and consideration and consistency
and intention
compared to one that's just kind of left to their own devices in both sense of the word, because you've got kids on devices learning all kind of things that they don't be learning. And I feel that lack of logic that comes or stems from a father's absence that a young Black male needs is a huge problem. And it isn't something that mum can fix. I'm accepting of that. And I feel like a lot of women should be.
On her own, no. I don't
On her
believe.
own, no, exactly. But I do have, like, my son hangs with my cousin on a regular basis. He's our older cousin, so that's where he will get the kung fu chop and the drape up and all them kind of things from, and he teaches him martial arts, and so I am fortunate to have him as part of my son's life, in addition to my dad. My dad is very, I wouldn't even say soft. My dad is just like me, like simplicity. Like I don't need nonsense. Like, this is right and this is wrong. Do the right thing. If you do the wrong thing, then I'm going to tell you you've done the wrong thing, and you're going to have a consequence for it. But it's exactly in that tone and manner. There's no loud up and rare and all this kind of nonsense. I think in today's world, that doesn't help to ground a young man. And don't get me wrong, I can get cross and my dad can get cross, but our cross is not going to help my son at the age of 20 to navigate in the world the way that it is.
It will,
What's
but
that?
not. It will help, but it's balance. This is what I'm trying to say. This is why I don't want it to be in your mind that what you have and what you're able to contribute does not help. Because I'm not saying every single time there's a problem, he has to be willing and able and capable of moving to a man, and that's not manhood. Sometimes you have to know how to mellow and be easy, and that's why you're meant to have a mother and a father, because you're, no matter who you are, whether you're male or female, you're supposed to have the balance of both. And then your biology is supposed to then dictate where you lean more towards. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it's essential he has what you're able to give, what your father has to give, what your cousins are able to give. Somehow, some way, there has to be a way of putting the other side in. Now, whether that comes from, like you say, learning martial arts, being around, I don't know, some kind of sensei that's able to. I've seen that guy on Instagram that can't remember his name now. I think his name's Jason something. Older black guy, American, does martial arts, and if you hear the speeches that he gives these young children, they're like 7, 8 years old, and they're getting frustrated, crying, and he gets down to their level and he talks to them and he says to them, like, what are you really feeling now? Like, it's not about you not being able to do this. And the way he's talking is a great insight into the goal when it comes to who I'm trying to grow to be and be able to be for my daughter. That's the energy. Like, rather than automatically I'm feeling the pangs in my heart, like, oh gosh, jeez, what's wrong? That's my autopilot. Oh gosh, what? Who did? What? What? Silly chair. Why is the chair rocking? You know, like, that kind of energy is like, that's how I want to kind of, she's got all that. It's about the balance. It's about the calm energy, and it's about the firm energy, and it's about, okay, like, I remember, sorry, I know, but my brother used to tell me his dad, R.I.P. Big Monty, right? When he used to get in trouble, and his dad, his dad would ask him why he did X, Y, and Z, or why did you think it was all right to whatever, and he would say, I don't know.
Oh, that winds me up.
But his dad would say, well, that's not a good enough answer. And he would ask him the same question again. And he said one time he was there for hours because he didn't have an answer. His dad would not move, whether it takes 3 hours, whether it takes 2 days, whether now you got to go back to your mum's house and next time you come back, he knows we're not moving on from this subject until you give me an answer. And that's what especially I think a boy child needs. But I suppose all people need, because every child needs a father. I mean,
I run that on my daughter because she is a prime one for that I don't know answer. And my response to her is, if you don't know why you're doing something, don't do it. It's as simple as that. Because there has to be, and in all honesty, she must know why she does certain things, because it's just like,
that's why she shouldn't get away with getting away with. All she has to do is say, all right, cool, no, you're right, yeah, I won't do it again. And now, yay, win for you. No, her goal in that conversation is to end this awkward interaction. Your goal in this conversation is to find out why, in her mind, because that might not, what she tells you might not be the answer, might not be the truth, not the truth, but that might not be accurate. But the truth of the situation is, she has to understand that you can't just get out of stuff by saying, I don't know. Because that's what my brethren told me. His pops told him, like, that I don't know ain't going to work in the real world. So it ain't going to work here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to work. And these are the things that I never got none of that. But this is through observation and being plugged into what I lack. Because once I realized, oh gosh, I missed out on stuff. Like I've told you before, I didn't realize I was missing out on stuff until I was way older than I think other children.
Mm-hmm.
Other children, when I look back and I think, right, no one, I didn't even ask, where's my dad?
Mm.
You know what I mean? I got people close to me that their kids asked them from under 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, why ain't I got a dad?
Mm.
I wasn't asking none of that.
And that's something I wanted to ask you actually in the
Yeah.
previous episode when you said that that feeling didn't kick in for you till you were like 17, maybe around that age. Like,
Yeah.
weren't there parties or social situations where,
No,
okay,
they weren't. It weren't until, because my mum never mentioned him, it wasn't until I was in a shop and somebody literally looked at me how I was standing and asked me if I was my mother and my father's son. And cut a long story short, I ended up going mad in the shop because he wouldn't give me the guy's number. But
so you were stood the way your dad would stand, I'm assuming,
that's what he said. That's what he said.
and
And
that the way you were stood allowed this person,
my face, obviously, I
allowed
believe.
them to identify you as your father's
Yes,
son.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
And then, but then when I found out, okay, so you know him, and at that point, I'm like, I'm on smoke with him when I see him. I've
Mm.
got a whole lot of animosity towards him. I'm full of testosterone, don't know what to do with it. 18, however old I was,
Mhm.
thinking I'm the baddest man in the world.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm 19, turning 20. And I literally have tried to stick it on. I've said, oh, he's asked me to, why do you want to speak to him? Because he's an old Rasta man, he's not silly, he can feel my energy. And when I've told him what I want to do to him, when I see him, he said, well, I can't give you the number then, can I? As a sensible adult, I can't give you the number. And so I've gone mad in the shop and my brothers had to drag me out of there. And then that was the beginning of me realizing, wow, why have I reacted like that? I've
Mm.
never even thought about the man.
Mm.
But now, like, I want to mash up Elder's shop and move mad because whatever. So that's when I realized, okay, that's when I started internally looking. And that was the beginning of that journey, you know?
Do you, as we wrap it up, do you think there
Mm.
comes a point where you just decide, I'm enough? I'm not even interested in whatever it was that he was going to offer.
No. Um, for me personally, I I search for information, not necessarily always for me, but for my daughter. I
Mm.
want to be able to be an even fuller version of myself. I'm not trying to change myself. I'm happy with who I am. I just want to be a better version of myself for her.